Welcome back to our overview of video cameras. We've covered a lot of ground with sensor sizes in episode 1, image quality in episode 2. Now let's go over camera functionality. There are 5 main areas of functionality: battery capacity, audio inputs, video outputs, ergonomics, and image control. Generally speaking, battery capacity increases as you go up the tiers of cameras, and it peaks at camcorders. Cinema rigs need a lot of power and require an external source via large expensive batteries. In terms of audio, lower-end cameras only accept one audio source, usually through an 1/8-inch audio jack. Camcorders and cinema rigs typically offer 2 XLR audio inputs because they provide balanced audio without cable interference, and they provide phantom power for microphones that require it. Camcorders also offer a mount for professional shotgun microphone, whereas DSLRs only allow you to mount a less effective hot shoe microphone. Then there are video outputs. Lower-end cameras only include one HDMI output. HDMI connectors are fragile and they break often, and HDMI is limited in the distance of cable you can run a signal through. Therefore, SDI cables are industry standard for professional use. Camcorders offer multiple outputs in HDMI and SDI, and cinema rigs offer the most outputs, all SDI. Multiple outputs are necessary when working on larger sets where clients and key crew need their own video feeds, but they're less useful for your average shooter. And finally, there are camera ergonomics. Consumer cameras are so basic they don't even allow you to change lenses. Mirrorless and DSLR cameras are perfect for photography, but lack a lot of features of pro video. The most complete out-of-the-box cameras are camcorders. They have handles for handheld work and external adjustments that aren't buried in the menus. They also have on-camera monitors or viewfinders that are large, bright, and adjustable. Without buying a single add-on, these cameras are ready to go. And then, just like with every other category here, cinema cameras aren't as well equipped out of the box. They require tens of thousands of dollars of add-ons to get the same functionality as a camcorder. And finally, there's image control. Neutral density filters, called ND filters, and signal monitors are important tools for videographers. Only camcorders offer internal ND filters for controlling exposure, and consumer cameras will only give you histograms for image control, which are really designed for photographers. Camcorders and cinema cameras include other tools like a waveform monitor or a vector scope that give you a lot more information about the image you're recording. That's a speedy overview so you have some background, but you're probably still wondering which camera's right for you. In the next episode, I'll sit down with pro content creator Michael Rubenstein to talk about how all these features come into play during real-world filming, so you can decide what sensor, what quality of footage, and functionality is the right fit for your production. Thanks for watching.